Meeting will come to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Do we have, anyone have any changes to the agenda? Additions or? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve it.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda's accepted. We have minutes from the previous meeting. Anybody have any corrections?
There was one comma out of place, but Michelle caught it, so. I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
With the correction to the comma.
She corrected it ahead of time.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. I thought maybe that's why she was gone this morning.
I told her I was going to bring it up.
Okay. Public comment. Anybody want to make a public comment? Ryan?
Is this on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Red-
Oh,
now
you
it's-
had, there you
yeah.
go.
There it is.
Now it is. We can see the red light, so you can't. So.
You should introduce yourself. I know who you are, but.
Ryan Van
it's-
Gorp, Yucatan Township.
Okay, thank you.
I want to correct the record a little bit from last week. The Erickson permit has been mishandled by Houston County for 5 years. It began with us reporting violations to the former zoning administrator. The response was for him to work with the Ericksons to retaliate against anyone who spoke out against the mine. A few of the actions taken were to attempt to get Baker's house torn down, get Miss Iverson's cabin torn down, filing a false feedlot complaint against the Van Gorps, and attempting to get Miss Baker fired from her job, and more. An independent investigation revealed that the zoning administrator gave, and this is all quotes, preferential treatment, favoritism, special treatment, secured advantages for, and advocated with other government entities on behalf of the Erickson permit. He threatened and intimidated neighbors who spoke out against the permit and misused his position to retaliate against opponents, end quote. The zoning administrator, the current zoning administrator, admits the county was in error in not sending a letter certifying non-compliance. Our complaints about the mine were never acknowledged. However, every complaint against one of us was immediately and aggressively pursued. Our first appeal to the Board of Adjustment, just prior to the renewal, was denied. This is a denial of due process. Also, just prior to the renewal hearing, the chair of the Planning Commission contacted each of the plaintiffs to attempt to coerce us into going along with the renewal. When we would not agree and brought up the violations, he told us we would lose. At the renewal hearing, the former zoning administrator misled the Planning Commission, saying there were no violations. The chair would not allow any violations to be debated, much less adjudicated. When it was brought up that the EQB maintained that the EAW was pending.
Yes, sir.
If you're going to allow this in, I would suggest that you're getting yourself in a position that because of the information that the board's taking in outside of the rules that you had at the last meeting, that you may end up having to allow some feedback from the other parties here, so you may want to think about how much this you may want to keep.
Could I comment on that? We asked Mr. Squires to submit the court record, which would have covered all of this, and it was relevant because it's the history of the case. And he refused to do so. I'm not sure why, but it seems like the history, the court record, should have been a part of this case. And that's what I'm reviewing here.
Okay. In the, and I guess I don't want to debate it today, but do you have that all in written form, right?
Yes?
Can you just pass it to each board member. Yeah, we aren't going to be making a decision until the 22nd meeting.
Will you read it? We've kept,
I
for
will.
5 years, we've been sending stuff into a black hole here, and I'm sick of it. Will you read it if I email this to you? All 5 of you?
I've read all.
I read
yeah.
every single email I get thoroughly.
I have read everything that's been sent to me.
I think we all have.
Okay, I'll send it to you, but I want to object here. This is a clarification of misstatements made at the last meeting. These issues were not adjudicated. 4 issues have been adjudicated, 3 of them in our favor.
Okay.
Public comment?
Yes.
Donna Buckby, Yucatan Township. Already some of you are not listening when you're writing and reading. And if this is the only time that we're given to be heard, I would appreciate that you listen instead of do work that maybe you could have done before or after.
And I think some people might be taking notes on what was said.
Okay, that's great, but I don't know if that's true. So I hope I'm not talking out of turn here, but I just want you to know that when Brian was saying that people were threatened with having their houses torn down, one of the people threatened was a pregnant woman. And if you want to wonder how we have sustained this effort for 5 years, it's that kind of treatment. Not just that we are right about the violations, and they are wrong, but because of the treatment we have received and our neighbors have received. And those people, even though that was a bogus charge about the house being too close to the mine, those people had to spend money and time and scrambling while she was pregnant. Think about that.
Sam, I just need a clarification myself. And again, we're not going to re-debate this today, but the judge remanded this back to the commission with a decision, to decide we can okay the CUP as is, we can suspend it, or we can ask that it start over. Okay.
Yeah, I think that would be in a broad outline of your from a broad outline of what your options are. Either revoke it, remain as is, and suspend it. But then you could always add, certain conditions, but they would have to relate to not just the purpose, if you will, for doing those things.
And that's really my question or concern, is that I kind of got berated for not talking simply about the road. But if it were simply the road, that'd be about a 30-second decision. The road was there, and now it's here, and what do we want? But in order to make a decision on this CUP, there's history that I can't ignore, and I just don't understand why I would be asked to ignore it.
What I would suggest, I don't have the judge's order in front of me, but I think she remanded it back and cited a specific section of the ordinance. And I can't quote that, but I think it was that's remanded back to the board for further consideration. And I would have to take a look at that exact language, but that's the language that was back to you, certified back to you for further consideration. And the question then would be well, I think it is the violation that you have, further consideration of the violation. And again, in making a decision what should happen as a part of that violation. Whatever decision you make, you have to make findings and or reasons for what you do. And you can base that on, really what you're basing it on is what your decision is. So if your decision is going to be to revoke, then you need to have sufficient reasons for doing that. Or if it's for leaving it alone, you have to have sufficient reasons for doing it. So as far as what you would base upon and what you would consider, really depends on what your decision is.
Okay, all right. Brian, quickly, and then we're going to,
Your own ordinance says that the zoning administrator can inspect any mine at any time, and if any violation is found, you can adjudicate that in any way that you see appropriate. So it isn't just that you can adjudicate this particular violation. You can do that with any mine at any time. That's what your ordinance says in section 27.
thank you. All right, Mary Marshall, please.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Okay. Well, this morning, Commissioners, we're here to visit with you about kind of the outcome and some findings from the Home Care Feasibility Study Group that's been convened since January of this year. Just would like to take a moment to recognize the members of that committee and thank them for their diligent work. The conversations we've had at times were hard and sometimes agonizing as we were discussing all of the potential options for our home care program. But our group is with us today. It's Sandy Graves from Neighbors in Action, John Puglisa from Human Services, myself, two of our administrative staff, Loretta and Marcia Bauer, and our two commissioners, Commissioner Walters and Commissioner Miller, have served on that feasibility study committee. What I would like to do is just kind of recap for you some of the work that's been done to date, to give you some context for this conversation. And if you wouldn't mind, I'll kind of go through that and then give you an opportunity to ask away any questions that you might have. I've also provided kind of a home care summary with some data on there, some client data, revenue expense data that I'd like to visit with you a little bit about as well before a recommendation is made. So I got to put on the readers. So a little bit of just brief history about Houston County's public health. We have operated what we consider a stellar Class A home care license agency since January of '76. We've made thousands of visits to our county residents, either by nurses or home health aides. We really are proud of our reputation and a history, and our conversations have been harder really because of that, because we have such a fine agency. Over the years, we've had many challenges operating this Class A agency, and I'll address those in just a minute. So in January, our feasibility group convened around the discussions of really our current business model and really taking a serious look at, is it sustainable and is it durable, and if not, what might be a better possibility. And again, I would mention that, discussions about what to do with our home care program are not new. These discussions have taken place certainly before I ever showed up on the scene 3 years ago. And also it's not new statewide as well. There's been many parts to this equation that we really looked at. And some of those are, again, we've reviewed the history of the home care, the industry itself, the public and the private sector. We've looked at state and local trend data, client data, revenue and expense data, as well as some future forecasts. What does it look like going into the future? We've reached out to other public health agencies who have discontinued their home care programs, asking about what challenges they have encountered and the reasons for making those decisions to discontinue, and there are many. We've studied state statute as it relates to our service mandates. What is it that we're mandated to do? What is it that we're not mandated to do? We've met with 3 private sector home care agencies interested in expanding their services in Houston County. We've researched what they call the Home Health Compare Star Ratings for the agencies that we've met with to assure that we would have options for quality and patient satisfaction pending a decision by the board should you choose to discontinue home care. We've also met with ASME, our local union, 2166, which represents our home health aid staff, to present our current challenges in home care, our trend data, and some facts and findings of our study group. We've also considered our current capacity of the agency as it relates to those core public health functions that we are mandated to provide. The Minnesota Department of Health is concerned about what's happening in rural Minnesota with our public health agencies and our ability to deliver those core functions, those core responsibilities and activities, and particularly when there are so many emerging and competing needs that challenge our current business model. Emerging infectious diseases being one of those. We do have a mandate to assure the basic protections are in place. So some of our findings that we concluded as the study group. We concluded that under Minnesota Statute 145A, it outlines the Community Health Board's responsibility. There is no requirement statutorily to provide this service. There's not a mandate. Minnesota has 51 community health boards. We are one of those combined with Fillmore. And we are seeing a decline in community health boards providing home care since 2009. In 2009, there were 25 community health boards that were continuing to provide, through their public health agencies, home care services. By 2015, they were down to 13. In 2017, I'm aware of at least one more that has gotten out of providing home care business. The other findings that we researched was that there are many different reasons for why agencies discontinue services, or a blend or a mix thereof. Again, the core responsibilities of demanding more dedicated administrative and staff time. Some agencies are experiencing a swell of private providers, lots of people providing in the private sector home care services. A widening disparity between the cost of services and reimbursements. An increasing dependence on local levy to subsidize home care services. An increasing expense to administration to meet licensure requirements, and again, this is something that we are going to be faced with should we continue to have in place by the 15th of July of this year. As well as many more alternative options for seniors, such as assisted livings, et cetera, decreasing number of home care clients for multiple reasons, and certainly some of the challenges that we've encountered in finding a qualified workforce. I'd like to just take a minute for you to take a look at this home care summary sheet that I passed out earlier. There are some for the public to review that are also available on the chairs there, if you'd like to take a look and just follow along. This gives you some actual trend data from our Houston County Public Health and kind of what our experience is and what we're seeing. We didn't really need to go back any further than from 2014 to give you a good picture of really what's been happening. On this first bar graph, you'll see under the blue is really the revenue that has been brought into the agency from, and this is just purely home care services, so we're talking again about skilled nursing, home health aides, and homemakers. The orange is the expense side of it, and the gray is really the levy contribution to offset the expense of the provision of home care services. So if you take a look at that, you can see on the bottom there, it delineates actually what those expenses were lined up against the revenue and the levy. Right now, we're averaging about 10% of the expenses are being covered by levy. I don't anticipate that it's going to get any better should we decide to stay in the business of providing home care. The forecast doesn't really show that our reimbursement at any point will catch up to what our expense is. On the next piece of that, the home care clients with skilled nursing, home health aide, and homemaker, the actual number of clients that we've served, you can see that there's been a significant decline since 2014 to 2016. So we've gone from 107 clients in 14 to 59 in 2016. I would like to make a distinction about that number, however. Currently in 2017, we're at 53 clients that are receiving either skilled nursing or home health aid services. I do want to point out that, you know, since January, and again, because we've been anticipating and planning, and through attrition, we've had some staffing decrease that we have not replaced, waiting to see where we were going to go with this. We have had some both informal and formal referrals that we have not accepted. So that number of 53 could actually be some more. I could guess it would be maybe as many as 10 to 15, not more than that. Either way that you kind of slice and dice that, we never get to a break-even point, even with more clients. So I'm going to stop there for a minute and check in with you and see what questions you have, comments. Quiz away.
Since we're on a Board of Health with Fillmore County, where is Fillmore County relative to this situation?
All I know is that they are currently continuing to provide home care services. You recall in, I believe it was February when we had our joint Board of Health. You know, they were part of that discussion when we kind of talked about that we were in this process.
Yeah.
I don't know that they're where we are as far as coming with a recommendation or doing this study. I don't have an answer for that one. I just know that they're continuing to provide home care services.
Okay. Would our decision in any way impact them? That we need to be discussing this with the
Jointly.
Fillmore Board before we...
No.
Yeah,
We're,
okay, there's
we
no-
can be independent. They can choose to stay in, or they can choose to take a look at what we've been doing as well.
Okay.
Yeah, either way.
Okay, thank you.
They're kind of two separate public health departments
Correct.
for each county, and the joint powers is mainly to get our loans for, not loans, grants from SHAC and some of the other financial help we can get.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Mary, you mentioned AFSCME. How did that work out? Is there problems coming down the road with employees and AFSCME?
Well, certainly there are impacts for AFSCME employees. And I can talk about that right now if we're there. Some of that, I guess I would like to spend a little bit of time talking about both the client and the agency impacts, should you decide to do this. The staffing impacts, we currently have 7 home health aides, and that equates to 4.6 FTEs. Should you decide to discontinue home care services, they would receive a layoff notice. What we would request of the board today is that as an agency, we would host and work with HR to put together a job fair with, we're aware of 5 other home care agencies that could potentially serve clients in our area. And we would like to do everything we can to mitigate this unemployment situation, and with the potential of some reemployment as soon as possible for those 7 home health aides. Some other information for you, an approximate payout of sick and vacation for those 7 home health aides would be approximately $30,000. These are long-term loyal employees that we've had, and you know, there is substantial sick and vacation there, so that would financially be the impact, a one-time expense of that. Of course, I'd have no idea what a potential unemployment expense would be. I don't know. That's the other thing is I would not anticipate that there would be any other staffing reductions. Over the last 3 years since I've been here, we have had a total reduction agency-wide of a little bit over 6 FTEs since 2014. I don't expect any more impacts, either nursing or administrative staff at this time. Also, we have our caseload, and the critical importance that we are all concerned about is the impact to our 53 current home care clients. What would happen should you choose to make that decision? We would hand deliver a notice to each client very soon, in the next week to week and a half, to give all of our clients some adequate time to really research and choose another home care agency. Once we are notified who that would be, we would help with that transfer in an organized fashion. With really, would want as little disruption as possible. Make sure that they get the paperwork, the client files, et cetera, so that there's no lapse of service there. That's very, very important, critical. Should you decide to go this way, the probable end date that we would request would be July 31st. That gives us plenty of time, our home health aide staff plenty of time, and providers to kind of gear up and to anticipate and expect some potential admissions from the current clients that we serve. Other questions?
Well, being on that committee too, and I've spoken with the whole committee, my big concern was our home health aides and our clients. And years ago, we did not have options where they could go other than public health. Where now we did interview 3 for sure, and we have names of 2 more for sure that work in Houston County. So there is options for them to go to, and we would work very closely to get them settled. Same with our home health aides are very aware of the numbers going down and their hours going down, and this might be an opportunity. They might go with the client to whichever option the client chooses. So that's where the job fair with the agencies would really help too for these people. We did go through this pretty thoroughly over the last 6 months.
Would it be a lot of, do we have an estimate of any increases it would be for the clients to go with the private health care, home health care?
You mean increases in
Yeah, I mean,
expense?
yeah, expense increases. I mean, is that a
Well,
big?
the private sector accepts basically the same managed care, public assistance type of reimbursements, Medicare, that we do. So with the exception of some private pay clients, and we have a very few of those, they may feel some difference, either better or worse, depending upon where they go. But, you know, all of the agencies that we've visited with and are aware of are Class A licensed agencies. That means that they can tap into those same reimbursement sources that we do, as long as they continue to keep their license in good stead.
Anyone else have any questions? I guess I would just like to thank Mary for, I guess, leading the committee and the study, and it certainly wasn't done without a lot of thought and insight and study. It's probably one of the more difficult things that we will do this year as a commission if we choose to go with the recommendation, but I think the rationale is sound.
You know, commissioners, decisions like this really, you know, we make decisions every day, and some are both in our professional and our personal lives, and some are small and innocuous, and then there are others that are much more important. And really at the heart of this, you know, we're talking about people's lives, their livelihoods and well-being. In the same hand, we're trying to balance what's best for Houston County as far as a business model in our public health. And, at the human factor that goes with this, at the heart of these discussions, is what makes this a difficult decision. It simply does. And that's why we have taken so much time to really, I think we've looked under every nook and cranny here to see, is there something that we could or should have done differently? And, it's time to make a decision.
And I guess I would just add too that if the other approximately 70 counties that have discontinued, if it had created a big issue statewide, I'm sure we would have been aware of it by now. I have not seen any big uproar that this has caused numerous hardships. If somebody has data of that nature.
Right. We haven't seen it.
Okay, ma'am, you have a question?
Actually, kind of a statement. My name is Gretchen Cook. I was a home health aide for Winona County for 17 years. I worked for home care and hospice through the hospital for another 10 years. We were let go, or we could go with the agency when they took over Winona County. Well, if you wanted to work for $9.50 to $10 an hour with no drive time between clients, which could be on weekends sometimes 100, 150 miles for some of us, no, that's just your break time, I guess, or time to eat lunch while you're driving from client to client. And some of the gals that were being paid a lot less when the weather is bad, they aren't going out. They can't afford a car that'll get them there. And we were never, ever told, there's too much snow, it's too cold, don't go. That's when they need us the most. But the gals aren't showing up. One man, double amputee, was left for 4 days with no help. Nobody called. That's my only statement. You're giving up a lot when you're giving up your good workers.
Thank you. Mary, one other thing. We aren't abandoning, we're still an agency that is mandate might be, but needs to respond.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. What I would also add too, Commissioner, is that of these 53 current home care clients that we have, 33 of those will continue to have case management services through our agency. So that means that, our nursing staff will still be in there some, and it varies depending upon what the needs are. So in some respects, it's, there will be two agencies operating, one from a skilled nursing perspective and another from a case management perspective for, well over half of these folks. And
Okay.
so,
All right.
yes.
Anybody else? That's all, Mary?
That's all, Commissioners.
Okay,
I
so-
guess, I would just conclude with, for all of the reasons that I just briefed you on, the study group does recommend to the board to discontinue home care services by July 31st of 2017.
Okay.
Being a part of the study group, I will make that a motion to discontinue our home health services effective July 31st.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Discussion.
I do feel that we did ask the people we interviewed for that would do the private home, we did ask about wages, we did ask about benefits, and they each came up with, package deals, and there again, they would be part of the health fair.
Did you ask about turnover?
Pardon?
Did you ask about turnover?
Yes, we did. We had some very detailed questions about turnover. Okay.
Anybody else? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mary.
We'll be moving forward then and keep you in the loop as to kind of how things transpire.
Thank you. Rick?
Morning.
Good morning.
I'm filling in for Aaron. Can I take a few minutes? I forgot my paperwork. I grabbed the wrong
Do
folder.
you want to use mine?
I have conditional use orders for Jack to sign.
Oh, okay.
Just a
Okay.
couple minutes. I'll be right back.
Brian, are you going to be long?
Wait.
Okay. That's quick. Yeah. Sure, you want money again, and so that.
Morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Here today to recommend approval to award the bid of a bid opening for a bridge replacement on Sweet Bottom Road, project SAP 028-599-091. We had, for a bridge replacement on Sweet Bottom Road in Sheldon Township, we had 6 bidders on the project, which is very nice to see. Typically on a project like this, we get anywhere from 2 to 4 bidders, so 6 is a high number. So the low bid was Van Gundy Excavating, $214,103. If you look at the results of the bid and actually with how the bid was read, there was a bid error in one of the bids, which ended up bringing the number of the one bids significantly higher than the other ones. So as it was read at the bid opening, the high bid actually was a low bid at that time. So these numbers have changed since the bid opening. But due to that discrepancy in the bid, we had to essentially, this is how the numbers turned out. So recommendation is to approve Van Gundy Excavating for the bid. This project, if approved today, would more than likely start around the 3rd week of June.
I'll make a motion to award the bid to Van Gundy Excavating for SP 028-599-091.
Second.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Go at it. Thank you.
Sorry about that. On Thursday, April 20th, like I said, I'm right now coming into the board in regard to a planning commission meeting held April 30th. Thursday, April 30th, or April 20th, I should say. There was a number of items on the planning commission agenda at that time. There was 1, 2, 3, 4 variances, and 3 of those were approved. The other one was tabled. And then also there was 4 public hearings, conditional uses. The first conditional use was for Sean and Kelsey Sen to build a dwelling on less than 40 acres in an ag district. That was approved. The next one was for, public hearing was for Nicole and Jamie Ramsey, build a dwelling on less than 40 acres in an ag district, which was approved. The following meeting was for a feedlot expansion in Spring Grove Township by Darren Meyer, or DeSue Holsteins. They expanded the feedlot from 147.8 animal units to 553.7 animal units. And these are consisting of dairy cattle, and to build a manure storage structure with a capacity over 20,000 gallons. That public hearing was tabled, that expansion, and the planning commission plans on reviewing and going out and looking at the facility. The following,
Excuse me, where's the location again?
in Spring Grove Township.
Okay.
The last public hearing, the same Darren Meyer and DeSue Holstings for an expansion in Wilmington Township. They're expanding a feedlot from 550 animal units to 774 animal units consisting of dairy cattle. And that expansion was approved by the Planning Commission. I know the public hearing that was in Spring Grove Township, actually, there was some concerns as far as proximity from some neighbors there, and also there was brought up there are some sinkholes within the surrounding area that needed to be viewed. So the plan, like I say, the Planning Commission, and also there's some input from the townships, some concerns there too that, so they had tabled it, and like I said, they set up a time to go out here now in May, I think next week, to view the site.
Do we bring the state in as far as the sinkholes are concerned, or some outside agency, or?
I know there was some input that I think Aaron had delved into as far as some response from, I think, a Jeff Green on some of this stuff.
Because I'm absolutely not very knowledgeable, but I have heard in the past that if the two sinkholes can very well indicate that there would be more if one looked into it, so.
Well, the thing is with these manure structures, there's borings, soil borings, everything, and engineering done for these pits and stuff that before they'd approve, but these firms are well aware of the proximity from the sinkholes to where the facility is going to be built.
Okay.
I can add one thing to that. The farm that I used to own and where I still live, a storage facility very similar to what's being proposed, although not as large, was put there. And you wouldn't believe the amount of re-rod and concrete in the base of that thing. The only kind of a sinkhole that would affect that would be if a sinkhole would open up that would simply swallow the entire structure. A small sinkhole in the middle of it isn't going to make any difference. The concrete like that and re-rod every foot or so or whatever it is.
Well, like I said, I mean,
it used to be in this county, and state regulations also, used to be that you could build a manure facility like that with, correct me if I'm wrong, a clay base and plastic underneath, or plastic on top of the clay. You can't do that anymore. So it's a vast improvement in my opinion.
Good. Okay, Rick?
But I would like to, I do need board approval on those three conditional uses that were approved by the Planning Commission.
You were at those.
Yeah, a couple of things. There's Ramsey's had there's a garage that's right there that they were planning on using when they're fixing up and building their house, temporary dwelling when they work on it, over the weekend or something like that. There was a few conditions on there that they had to deal with the septic that was there and put in a holding tank there, and that once the house was completed, that's not going to be a living quarters area anymore. The Meyer deal that was tabled, the sinkhole portion was part of it. The other part of it was that there's a waterway that one of the facilities was going to be going over the top of, that they were going to basically keep keep the waterway open, but it had the building was going to get proposed to be over it. So the Planning Commission and the Feedlot Advisory Committee, which temporarily is the members of the Planning Commission, wanted to kind of get a little bit more of a grasp on what's going on with those issues. So they said, well, let's table it and take a look at it and make sure that everything is up to par. So that was some of it. The other facility that Myers had over, it was a smaller area. The only issue that they talked about was the roads when they've got their manure storage facility. They're going to use primarily the field that is on the property. But some of the townships had some questions as far as how much you're going to be going down the road, usage, whatever. They said it wasn't going to impact that much, and obviously they're going to take care when it was soft, obviously try and limit the impact. So those are kind of the quick abbreviated highlights. I don't, Fred, you were there. If I missed anything, you think of anything that?
Well, basically, the holding tank that they propose to build is large enough for year-round storage so that they will not have to be hauling with heavy rigs in the spring.
Right. So their facility was like 4 million gallons, if my memory serves me right, and it was not even half of that that was going to be used for manure. The rest is for water runoff and retention and all that kind of stuff. So it was going to be more than what they would need. So part of that was so that they wouldn't have to impact a lot, where they could hold it, for a year, and when weather's nice, they can go out and do it. They wouldn't have to be forced to spread numerous times through the year. So that was that. We're going to go, I believe it's May 10th at 3 o'clock to a visit for that one issue, and that'll come back. The other ones would be recommended for approval, so I will motion. Well, should do them individually.
Individual, yes.
Oh, can't we do them all at once?
I think we always took them each individually,
Yeah. Well, do you want to read them off, and then we'll...
Yes, the first one is by Sean and Chelsea Sen. The only conditions that were placed on that permit is that they shall comply with all federal, state, and local laws and regulations.
Yep, motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
The second one is by Nicole and Jamin Ramsey. The conditions on that there's 4 of them. The permittee shall comply with all federal, state, and local laws and regulations. Existing building be brought into compliance with the ordinance. Septic system for existing building be brought into compliance with the ordinance prior to issuance of a zoning permit, and the driveway must meet requirements of the ordinance. Driveways, what we're talking about that is they're coming off an existing public road that they have to meet slope requirements so that emergency vehicles and that sort of stuff can be addressed. We kind of keep slope requirements at 12%.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Approved.
And the last one is by Darren Meyer and Sue Dairies. 2 conditions on that one, and this is in Wilmington Township. The permittee shall comply with all federal, state, and local laws and regulations. The permittee shall obtain all permits required under the Minnesota Animal Feedlot rules prior to commencing construction.
Move approval.
Second.
Question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Approved.
Just so the board knows, there's been discussion too. We get some of the feedlot stuff coming in, and they have to go out and get engineering drawings and stuff like that. Some of the stuff gets approved prior to the engineering drawings for the fact that if you're going to go out and spend tens of thousands and sometimes $100,000 on drawings and engineering and structure stuff, and then get denied the permit. So that's why, if anybody's wondering about engineering technical drawings or whatever, it gets approved and then they go for the drawings for that purpose. So
That makes sense.
We must still sign off on them engineering drawings, or
if there's
condition on an engineering company approving.
Yeah, so and Rick, you could probably even attest to this too, but so it's up to them to go and get the engineering drawings, and then they would show the zoning office and things. If there's an issue, it would get brought back, but if there's not an issue and everything's going forward, then it never would come back to us. The big thing is just, we're approving that, yes, we approve this to happen if you follow these guidelines and get professionally approved engineering drawings. It really shouldn't be an issue. So.
Actually, the engineer then usually, they're on site as this thing is being constructed, and then they're signing off on it.
Okay, that's what I was kind of getting at, is
sorry,
that,
yeah.
you know, they've done it, but who's following up that they
Yeah, no,
build
the
it as
engineers,
per
it's their
engineer?
name and their firm is on that, and they're the ones that are assuming the liability on that.
Okay, great. Okay.
Anything else, Rick?
Yes, the zoning permits, there was 11, and I think you probably have those all that were approved by the planning commission also in our office, as far as meeting all the requirements. Everything from a house to additions on the house and different things, so I do need board approval on those two.
We don't need board approval anymore. They're
Yeah,
already approved.
we ended that.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't realize that.
Yep. Because we're approving permits that already have gone through technically. So
Yeah,
it's
they
more
are.
informational. So.
Yeah, okay, stands to reason.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Eric Kruger?
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
First thing on my agenda this morning are two contracts for the county. One is for STS services. The other is a maintenance agreement for court services. Their ATV, some of their computer equipment over there, which is includes upgrades to that equipment, etc. So we'll look at the STS contract first. This is a biennial contract. It floats over 2 years. A biennial agreement from effective July 1, 2017 to through June 30th, 2019. It's for an overall amount of $131,595.75 over the course of 2 years. This goes towards the salary benefits of the STS coordinator. I believe there are some administrative fees built in there as well. And is paid out in four equal payments, 2 payments per year. The overall increase over 2 years is from the previous contract is I believe we calculated it at, I'm looking back at the finance director, 6%, not what I had originally.
Not 9?
No, 9. 6% approximately, it's about $11,000. So what does the county get from this? This is a contract housed in the sheriff's office. What the county gets from this is we use the services of Sentence to Serve from purely just a facilities perspective. I certainly can't speak to any of the benefits that accrue to this being part of a jail program. However, from a county perspective, we get the services of Craig with his crew. Sometimes some crews have been better than others. We have to admit that, and more effective. But they do things for us, such as they assisted with painting the floors that were recently done, both in the boiler room and in the lower level of this building recently. They don't ride on our lawnmowers, but they do assist in keeping the greenery trimmed. I believe Craig takes them out to they go out to the fairgrounds and do substantial prep work for the fair. We have also used them for painting walls here, stripping the floors before. I had an assistant there assist with that process before we wax, etc. So those are some of the uses we may be using them, I believe, again this summer, as we are planning to do some sidewalk repair work that I have spoken with the STS lead about. And so I think that crew will be able to help us with that. So I'm recommending that the county executes this contract. It's been passed through the county attorney's office with his approval as to form and content.
I'll make a motion to approve the contract with Sentence to Serve.
Second.
Are there any questions? Who draws up the,
This is a state contract. I review the agreement. I have requested changes in the past and a few minor ones presently, just to make sure it's not one-sided, then it's approved by the county attorney. It is on a state form that they allow modification only for very few things, but it's on the state income contract form.
okay.
It's not quite what you call an adhesion contract, which really don't have much room to it. And the only benefit, I suppose, to that is what Ms. Kruger and I are trying to do with all our contracts, is try to get them uniform, because then there's some predictability to our insurance company, and that's the same thing they want. Their attorneys want to the AG's office and doing regulatory contracts, is uniformity to them, so everybody is treated the same, and there's some predictability to it.
Okay, Sam,
Sounds good.
the microphone.
Because I didn't get back.
No, I heard you. Okay, anyone else? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Secondly, and this is drafted by, this is a county drafted agreement, was for a professional service agreement with a corporation called iSpace. They do business as iSpace Environments. They hold the intellectual property rights to the ATV equipment that's used and heavily relied upon and must be maintained in the courts. I worked with Andy Mildy, our IT director, on this, as well as had it reviewed for content and accuracy by the county attorney office. This is not simply a contract on a form. What we receive in technical service agreements from vendors are very one-sided agreements, if you will. So this is negotiated to the benefit of the county with regards to the maintenance, any rework, jurisdiction location. We hold them to a certain level of insurance. We're named as an additionally named insured on their insurance. We require that. And then we also negotiate the payments, how they'll be paid, what will be included. And so we held back on this because there were some changes coming down on the state equipment, and now everything is in place, and so it is time to go forward with this maintenance agreement.
So moved.
Second.
Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Thank you on behalf of my office, as well as I know Court Services is very appreciative, and the Sheriff's Office for the jail contract. The next item on the agenda is the employee change of classification and pay and a mechanic hire. And Brian, did you want to come up? You may recall that some time ago, a few months ago, we had a change in classification request for a, oops, I'm on the wrong page, for a Randy Hungerholt, and changed him from a labor specialist to a a maintenance specialist to a laborer. And that was a temporary effort due to the fact that his license had been withdrawn by the state. Since that time, his license has been reinstated. Both Brian and I have both viewed the documentation for reinstatement, and the agreement we have with the union at this time is to go forth with his reinstatement to his former position and former pay. So we're recommending the change of classification, rate, and pay for Randy Hungerholt from laborer step 3, a rate of $19.46 an hour, to maintenance specialist step 3, $22.90 an hour, effective tomorrow, May 3rd. And this will allow him to be back on the file.
I'll make a motion to approve the reclassification.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Okay, and this puts you back at a full staff for operators, I believe. Brian and I, along with the previous mechanic, interviewed, Brian and I reviewed the applications and selected one candidate for interview. We interviewed him, I should say, was it Friday?
Last week.
Yep.
Thursday.
And Brian has since checked the references, and we've discussed this particular candidate, and we're recommending the hire of Jacob Rayburn as a mechanic, B242, step 1, $19.93 an hour, effective June 5th, 2017, conditioned upon his successful completion of a background check. And do you want to speak to his credentials?
Yeah. So Mr. Rayburn, sorry, has his Class A CDL, meets all the minimum requirements for this position. He's CPR AED certified. He went to Kirkwood Community College, got a diesel truck degree back in, I believe, 2013. So he's worked for the Volvo Mack dealership down in Cedar Rapids for a couple years, moved back to this area where he grew up. Worked over at the lacrosse truck, doing some repairs over there for about 6 months, and he currently works over at the city of New Albin, helping out with their maintenance down there, roadways, sanitary sewer, all that stuff. So he's one of 2 maintenance employees over there doing a lot of their work. So we would like to hire him on here. We think he'll be a good fit for the county. Doesn't have a ton of experience on the maintenance side. There's going to be a lot of stuff that he's going to need to learn about how we do things. But overall, we think he's the right fit for the county, and recommend hiring him.
Comes from a farm background. One of the things that I know one of the concerns in the interview process that we expressed was his ability to be able to make things work when you don't have everything at your fingertips, as kind of the layman's, me being the layman here, mechanic. And he really satisfied those questions and was very responsive and satisfied those questions. I think Rick was very pleased. We really looked to Rick for his insights as well as our respective insights into the process. So we're highly recommending him at this time. And the June 5th start date is because he feels very committed to his current employer, giving them some lead time since there's only 2 of them in the shop right now.
I'll move approval of that contract.
I'll second it.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Is the sheriff here?
Morning.
Commissioners.
Commissioners, we have a request for 2 conditional offers of employment pending completion of background check by the sheriff's office. And I do have a change of effective date on one of them from the materials that were sent to you, so I will list that. At this time, we're recommending the hire of Rachel Meyer as a probationary jailer dispatch. That's a B232, Step 1, $20.78 an hour, effective May 22nd, conditioned upon successful completion of her background check. And we've been short a female jailer for a period of time, so.
Yeah, since Ms. Kruger left.
I'll make a motion to hire her as a jailer.
Second. Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Approved.
Okay, thank you. And the second is recommend the hire of Zachary Swedberg as a probationary sheriff's deputy, C42, Step 1, at a rate of $25.74 per hour. This would be effective May 24th, conditioned upon successful completion of background check, rather than the May 17th that's in your packet.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Anybody have any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner.
Yeah, I want to make sure I've gotten through everything. Okay. And then lastly is board interview of the assessor candidate. Who is here? Please come forward.
Good morning.
I have the questions I will hand out to you, just for those who may not be as familiar with the process. If this is your first time through how we do this, I sent the questions on to you earlier. I have a copy of for you. If you would write your recommendation, your comments, your thoughts down on that for the record. Appreciate it. This is an open meeting, therefore we do have to, I'll just remind folks that there are certain personal questions that probably shouldn't be asked in an interview anyway, but if you have follow-up to any of these questions or the candidate's response, feel free to ask the follow-up. Just be cognizant of to stay away from private information. Or questions that would solicit private information. Once you have completed your completed this morning, and I believe we have about 20 to 30 minutes on the agenda for that, I will take back your comments and I will prepare a report from the committee as well and include the board information and be putting potentially a matter on the agenda for your next board meeting. Okay?
You'll be giving us paper copies of that test?
I'm going to do that right now, sir.
Or you mean of the report after?
No,
Of the
this,
questions?
yeah.
You do have the packet I sent of the
Yep.
application
Yeah.
materials.
Yeah.
And if you would, well, I had one with your names on it, but you'll have to put your names on it. How's that?
I think we can do that.
I think so. And here, so you can follow along. And I'll put this little packet in the back. I'll go to the back of the room. Here is a hard copy of the application in case you want to pass it around, but I assume you have your own copies. I'll collect that back.
Sure.
Okay.
You want
Who
Fred
wants to start?
So
Fred?
this is Cindy Cresswell Hepley, candidate for assessor position. The committee interviewed her yesterday. And you'll
Oh.
have to speak close so that it's recorded.
The first caution is that microphone. You're probably going to have to pull that thing a little bit closer to you. They're interesting. Okay, just leave it at that. Briefly summarize your educational background and employment history, including budget experience.
Okay, first I'd like to thank you for this opportunity. My educational background, I think when you look at my assessment background, I had submitted a list of my courses that pertain to that. They include receiving my CMA, Certified Minnesota Assessor's License, then going for my AMA, which is the Accredited Minnesota Assessor's License, which comprised of many classes and developing that report that I believe you all received. Also having an 8-hour test and interviewing in front of the State Board of Assessors. Then from there I went on to my SAMA, Senior Accredited Minnesota Assessor, which was another 8-hour test. Besides that, I have a Bachelor's of Science degree from Winona State in geology with the emphasis on hydrology. I also have taken classes, computer classes at Western Wisconsin Technical College. I've taken accounting at a technical college in Detroit Lakes, and I also was an English major for a short time at Morehead State University. As far as budget experience, I did manage a club in Rushford for a few years and was in charge of ordering all of the services we needed and getting the help scheduled and entertainment scheduled. So I do have some knowledge of that. I do not have any directly with this office. That was done by my predecessor.
How long have you worked in the assessor's office?
I've worked for the assessor's office here in Houston County for 18 plus years. I started in 1998.
Cindy, could you please describe the general framework of the property evaluation process?
Okay, sure, I can. I believe the valuation process begins with our office going out. We have to know what parcels we have. We have to go out and physically look to see if there are structures on these parcels and how these parcels are being used. Are they commercial? Are they agricultural? Are they seasonal rec? Then we come back to the office, we determine a value, and we determine a classification. We determine if they are in fact seasonal rec or whatever. We have to code them. We have to keep our similar owners have to be main parcel is how we call it, where we code them all together so that they can reach, if they're agricultural, they can they're allowed to reach a ceiling of $1,940,000 before the classification rate changes from 0.5 to 1%. So we need to keep that all flowing correctly. We also need to look to see, are these homestead properties or are they non-homestead? Do they qualify for any of our programs like the Green Acres program, the Forest Management program, Rural Preserve, Special Ag? Are they disabled or veterans that receive sometimes a lower tax or sometimes no property tax depending on their situations? These are all things we have to keep in mind in order to get our valuations out. Once we receive this information, we also have to look at our sales studies. And what we do is we take what our value was and what the sale was, and we divide the sale price by our value, and we get a ratio. And by the state law, the center ratio, like say all the residential properties in City of Caledonia that are arm's length transactions, The median one of those ratios needs to fall between 90 and 105%. If it doesn't, we can get a state mandate telling us we need to increase or decrease all of the residential properties. So we have to keep a good eye on our sales and also our splits and combinations. Once we get our information, and we get information from you or cities or school districts with what levies they need, we hand all that information to Shar, and she determines as auditor who is responsible for what portion of the tax base.
It's a simple process, huh?
That's just a small part of it.
So, Cindy, I got a two-part question here. What's the, describe your approach to addressing like an upset or irate property owner? Like if somebody, we have that quite a bit where somebody is upset that it's not classified right, or they think they're getting taxed too much.
My first thing is to let them know that I'm listening. I want to know what it is. Is it the value they're upset with? Is it the tax they're upset with? Is it their classification? I have to know what they are upset with. Then I try to find a common ground. I'm a taxpayer in the county also, so I can sometimes relate to, I own a farm. If there's a farmer, I don't own it, we have a farm. If there's a taxpayer who has a farm and is upset with the values of the farm, I can try to relate that, yes, I'm in that same boat, and go through this. And I think that once they realize that you're listening and you can understand that, then we can talk it through. If I see an error, I'll correct it. If I can't see an error, then I can look at, are they involved in these programs that I mentioned earlier, the Green Acres, the Rural Preserve? If they're not, well, let's look into that. That might be the whole problem. So we kind of take through steps and try to understand and relate. And usually by the time I'm done, they've found out enough about the system that they know that I'm not, or none of us are pinpointing or picking out somebody, or, you know, I think we try to be very transparent.
So part two of this question, how is it, and I know you and your predecessor didn't have property in the county, but this is more general curiosity. What happens with, like, say, an assessor that lives within a county they're taxing? Do you have to have somebody from the outside evaluate your own property, or how does that work?
Of course we do. We go through an ethics course every 4 years, and within that course we are reminded that we cannot do any work on any parcels that directly affect us as far as value or anything. I cannot, I would not be able to do any of my properties, any properties that we are partners in, and even go as far as any children, you know, in brothers, sister-in-laws, things like that. We cannot do that. We give it to somebody else to do that. And so that, like my house that I live in Yucatan Township, that would be somebody else's responsibility.
Okay, okay, yeah. What about as far as, do you hand it off to somebody else within the office, or do you hand it off to somebody outside of the county?
No, it's all done within the county,
Okay,
because we are the only ones who understand our county. I don't understand Fillmore's way or Winona. We all do things a little different, so it's all within our county.
Sure.
There's certain aspects of this that the state has their regulations that you need to work within, correct?
Correct.
Okay, because I have a personal issue that I've talked about before, but where when you say you look at sales, and the situation would be if somebody lived in a house for 30 years and had no plans to sell it, but suddenly expensive houses are built around it, their taxes increase. And it doesn't seem like it's fair for the people that, you know, they say, well, your property value's increased. Yeah, but I don't want to sell it, you know. So my question is why the state and I don't know that you could do it countywide, could say, well, we would collect any value at the time you sell or the time you pass away rather than while you're still residing there. Do you understand the?
Yes, I do understand, I think, what you're asking. And states, I believe, like California might do it that way, where you keep it lower until the date of sale. However, Minnesota is not structured that way. And as far as, like, if you had a 30-year-old home and then you're in an area that all of a sudden is built up with newer homes, in our sales studies, we have different statistical things that come through, with coefficient of dispersion, and we have also other forms in which we can tell is a higher-end house too low or is a lower-end house value too high. And we can try to pinpoint those things and work on those. And we try to address that so that somebody isn't being forced to take up some of the tax burden just because their house has been there and it was built up around them.
Okay.
We try to focus on that.
Thank you. Next.
Describe what you believe will be the biggest challenge facing the assessor's office in the next 5 years.
To me, that's a relatively easy answer. I think that in our office, our major challenge is going to be keeping enough staff that is certified and able to go out and do the job. Right now, if I should receive this appointment, we will be down to 2 appraisers. When I was hired, we had 4. In order to become able to go out and do the job, you have to go through a list of classes. They're week-long classes with tests at the end that you have to pass in order to proceed. It takes generally at least a year to go from hire date, depending on when the classes are offered, to the date that you are certified and can go out. Then you still have to kind of learn. Just because you've passed all those things doesn't mean that you actually can know all the hoops and loops. You still have to become experienced and seasoned. And when I look at that, I look at the fact, too, that the state of Minnesota in 2013 made a mandate where all appraisers need to be at the AMA level that I mentioned earlier, which includes writing that report, 60 to 70 page report, and taking the 8-hour test. They have to do that by July 1st, 2019. We were told in 2013. None of the staff has achieved that other than myself. And I'm concerned because we have one that is probably going to retire on July 1st, 2019 because it's not worth it for him to go through all that for maybe another year. That would bring us down to 1 appraiser. And we need 3 to 4 easily. Mm-hmm. So I think in the next 5 years, my biggest problem is going to have enough staff to keep us on our quintile, which is every year we have to do 20% of the county parcels. We won't have the staff to do that, yet still do the other office work to keep us flowing.
Okay.
Describe how you might go about teasing out potential efficiencies between the assessor's office and other departments within the county in which it interacts.
I think that all of our land offices, be it recorders, GIS, zoning, treasurer's office, auditor's office, and our office, do and need to continue to work with each other. I think that within the last month we have kind of amongst us, a few department heads and myself have decided to change some processes in which we've eliminated some paperwork. One, for example, is our ECRVs, which are electronic certified real estate value reports that or forms that we get through the state and through our other offices. We used to copy those, and then we'd hand them to another department, and then we'd have somebody come from up on ours, down and run and pick those up, and this was, in my eyes and the eyes of the others, a waste of time and money, and we realized that all this can be found online, and so we've already adapted that within the last couple of weeks. I think that there's other issues coming. Another one, I talked to Dan in GIS. We have been told that we have to separate our tillable land from our pasture land, and that is going to be tough enough because sometimes it goes back and forth throughout the course of a couple of years. I was talking to a department head in another county, and they said maybe we could work with our GIS. And I talked to Dan, and he thought that could be potentially a good thing, and he was looking into, he didn't think it would be too hard. So just little things like that, where we talk amongst ourselves and say, let's see if there's a better solution. And I think that, I think we're all of us are wanting that, and I think we're all capable of doing that.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that answered your question.
Yes.
Anybody else? Do you have anything, Cindy, in summation that you want to?
No, I appreciated yesterday's interview and today's interview, and I think being here for 18 years, I do have an understanding of, what is expected as a department head and what my capabilities are.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right? Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you.
How do you wish to do this? Do you want me to collect your comments now, or would you prefer to drop them by my office?
Tess, were we supposed to attach a number rating to each one of these questions? I know we did yesterday with that interview. Do you want?
No, I think in general, if you just have just what your recommendation is, your thoughts in general.
You don't want,
Okay.
I mean, this isn't numbered, I mean, we're not talking 10 good and 0, just.
No.
We could apply a Likert scale of 1 to 5, 5 being outstanding, 1 being not acceptable. If you give that an overall rating.
That's a
At
good
the
idea.
bottom, just a number at the bottom.
Okay.
Okay. Then you want these now?
When you're ready.
Should probably go back.
Thank you so very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time, commissioners, and yes, I do apologize. I had a Likert on the other one. Failed to print that copy. Okay.
Okay, we'll move on to action items. Approved claims, human services, and license center disbursements.
Make a motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No, sorry, I was late. That was for an aye. I approve.
Are you listening?
I am, intently.
Approved. Adopt a resolution approving gambling permit for Houston Money Creek Snowmobile Club for gambling activities at Valley High.
Motion to approve.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. Adopt a resolution approving Viking Ridge Riders maintenance and grooming application.
Motion.
So moved.
Second.
Question, what does that involve? I'm
For the maintenance and grooming applications? It's to get, I think, for the reimbursement and the grants from the state for doing the.
for-
We're the pass-through agency
For the
for the snowmobile.
snowmobile trails?
Yep.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. Okay, the consent agenda. Items to be placed on file. Correspondence from DHS regarding single audit reports. Anything to add to that? No? Public notice of special feedlot advisory committee meeting. So,
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, discussion items.
Jack, did we miss, or did I just have it under a gambling activity? Should I
We got that already.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, that was the one where I was late on the eye.
Oh, okay. I thought we were still on.
No.
I was right with you then.
Yeah, yep, right there.
Okay.
You were listening.
No, I guess.
Okay, commissioners' reports and comments. Fred?
Well, I've got several things here. First of all, I was a part of the interview committee for the assessor yesterday. I learned an awful lot about the assessor's office and how it operates yesterday. I think we have a good candidate.
Good.
The Fair Board lease of the property that the county owns, that's not a simple thing. It's not something you just, okay, here, sign this. It takes some work to get the thing done. The last time it was done was 25 years ago, and there have been some changes in procedures since then. So Tess is working on it now, and after she gets done with it, why, Sam will get a look at it, and then we will give it to the Fair Board people and make sure that it's logical and reasonable to them, and then maybe we'll have to go back and forth on a few things there. I would hope to have that ready for presentation here at the next meeting, which is in 2 weeks.
Okay.
And the Fair Board people will probably be here at that point.
Very good.
Any questions about that? Okay. I was at the Planning and Zoning and Board of Adjustment meeting the other night, just as an observer, simply because the farm that I live on was part of the discussion that evening, and I just wanted to see what was going on there. I hadn't been in a Planning and Zoning meeting for a long time, so I was due. We had a Finance Committee meeting a week ago, and Teresa and I were also at a department head meeting. When was that?
A week ago.
It was a week,
yes,
yeah, a
last
week ago.
Tuesday.
Yeah, last Tuesday afternoon. The main topic at both of those meetings was the budget process. And we are doing some work with department heads on figuring out an organized, I don't know how to phrase it. Teresa probably knows a better phrase than I do. But anyway, an organized approach to the budget process is about the best I can do at this point. And we'll continue to work on that with those groups, and we probably will have something concrete to report to the board in a couple of months, I would guess, so that we would have something that we can talk about so that they have some direction as to an organized approach that we would like in that situation.
Good.
I'm done.
All right.
I had the same 3 meetings as Fred did, and interview process, finance, and the department head, and they are looking to the board a little bit for the process and parameters of planning their budgets, giving us context and realistic information almost before we get the exact numbers. So when they need something or have a rationale why. I mean, the only one I can think of the top of my head is like Char's office needs election equipment before the next big election. And she can explain the cost, the need, how many, et cetera, so we can actually make very good, determinations on the budgets as they come forward. And yeah, department heads are searching us for what we need to know before we set their budgets.
Do we have anything in writing, kind of a process that we've went through in the past? I've never been involved with a budgeting process, so I don't know. There's something a person could look at ahead of time and kind of get up to speed a little more?
Well, the budgeting,
Could you? It's a little in the dark on this. So.
Yeah.
Thanks, Carol.
And that's all I had.
Only thing I have met with Brian a few times. I've viewed a few state shops just on my own, measured, took sizes, and talking to Brian about just trying to come up with a better idea of square footage. And I gave him some stuff to look at, and he's going to get back to me, trying to be able to bring something back to say, okay, this is kind of what he's thinking, what are we going to think about it, to try to...
Talk.
Oh, sorry. Yep, just trying to work with the engineering department to come closer to a square footage of area that they would look for what we think we'd need, so we can start breaking this down a little bit and getting a little closer to what we need for a county highway shop.
that's it.
That's it for me.
Nothing. I just had the planning commission meeting, which we already talked about, approved, whatever. So that was about it.
I actually had 2 meetings, neither of which were held, I guess. I expected to go to Houston, or I did go to Houston Thursday night. I think you're all aware, there's the off-road vehicle trail is still alive, and I thought there was a meeting Thursday. I had it written down, but I went into the community building and right into a meeting of some co-op, so got out of there quickly. And then last night I was supposed to meet with the Hiawatha Valley Mental Health in Winona, of which we use their services, meets on Monday nights, but 2 people were out of the state and a quorum wasn't available, so that was canceled. Other than that, I think that's pretty much it. So we'll move on to, you've all had the information on the National Wildlife Refuges and an opportunity to suggest to our legislators that they press for some funding that could trickle down to us in Houston County. Anybody have any questions or comments about that?
No, it looks like a good thing to at least put the bug in their ear that we'd be interested.
Right. I think it's a win if we are one of the recipients, and we have nothing to lose by asking. So I guess I would invite a motion to go forward, and then could you
I will forward it to our
forward it to?
legislators.
Yeah.
Yep,
Okay.
at the federal level. Yep.
All right.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, good. Discuss appointment policy. 3 proposed options for the Board of Adjustment and 3 proposed options for the Planning Commission.
I don't know if everybody had time to review them at all. If you want to take some time to discuss them. Not that that's the only options, just something,
I did review them. They're very similar. There's just very little difference between each of the three options. The third option for both is the simplest. The first one for both has an interview process, and the second one basically has just board review of the applicants with no interview, right? In summary, everything else was the same. I was trying to lay the 6 pages out and go through it. But if you want to wait to discuss it.
well, I'd like to see, anybody want to put anything else in there, or something, so that we can, if we want to go forward with, are any of them something that's not written well, that shouldn't be in there? Should be a fourth option? Should there be only 2 options?
I would just like to get the process
Yeah.
moving.
So
that
you
we-
think those options are good enough to move forward at picking something out of them?
Well,
Is everybody, or?
again, I don't know that we're going to come up with one that everybody says, oh, that's perfect.
Yeah.
So I think something that's workable and fair.
The only specific suggestion that I would have would be option 3 on the Planning Commission, number 5. I would change 2 applicants to 1.
I think
Per-
that's
per
been
board
brought
member.
up before too, is to
Yeah.
go with 1.
And that's really the only change that I saw.
You want to read that, Fred?
Oh, okay. All eligible applications shall be forwarded, no, this is number 5 in the list, it's not the top thing. All eligible applications shall be forwarded to the Board of Commissioners with sufficient time for review, and each board member shall review and select 1 applicant per vacancy. Well, we've already got probably 5, and why have 10?
Yeah.
And also, normally, the problem with the Planning Commission especially, but also to a certain extent with the Board of Adjustment, is to find enough people who will agree to serve. And if it's down there for 2, realistically, most of the time, you're not going to have that many options anyway. So just leave it at 1, my suggestion.
What does somebody want to bring one of them forward?
Well, do we want to put it under action items for next week?
That's what I thought, if we could come to an agreement that there's anything we wanted to change in
Change or-
them now,
or add on.
add to, or
Okay.
anything else, so we say, okay, this is what we're gonna review, and say we're gonna,
Okay, we'll make a
Make it.
decision next meeting.
And it was just the point of number 5 on all 6 pages here. And I would go along with Fred on changing it to 1 applicant
Okay.
on the plan.
Is that agreeable to
it's
everyone?
agreeable to me. Shar, could I ask, if we make changes, could you resend this?
I would be happy to.
I appreciate it.
Anybody else have any suggested changes or modifications? No?
That's good.
Okay, we will have it on the agenda for the next meeting. Closing public comment. Anyone? We're going to have to get you a permanent chair there.
Good morning.
Well, he
Commissioner.
tried, you remember?
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Yeah, I'm glad it's still morning.
Yeah.
The last one was a long one. A clarification, please. The Feedlot Advisory Committee that will be meeting May 10 out at Darren Meyer's location, is that advisory committee comprised of some of the Planning Commission, or is it a different entity altogether?
It's all the Planning Commission for right now. I got to remember how this all went, but we had to set up a new advisory committee. There was we're supposed to have a set advisory committee. It hasn't been set, so what we did in the interim is the planning commission will be the advisory committee.
So is this an open meeting that I can attend?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
it's
I'll be there.
posted as a public meeting. It has to be, so.
And in regards to that, I have a couple of questions. It's my understanding from listening to or in viewing the digital video on the county website of this particular hearing, that there was an existing sinkhole on this property, but a new one has recently developed. So my question is, given that Aaron Lacker had a 2-mile radius of other sinkhole locations in this area, my question would be, to what extent do sinkholes develop over time? Is there a certain frequency, like once every 25 years, something opens up? The other one is, what's the average size of a sinkhole when it does open up? And will borings be required?
I know Rick said that borings were required.
Okay. The other thing was, there isn't a lot of earth between the surface and the bedrock, given that the concrete container of liquid manure, is it my understanding, will be set into the earth. I'm really worried about what's the cushion between earth and bedrock from the base bottom of the concrete container. So I'll be looking at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can I have a comment?
Yes, you may.
Donna Buckby, Yucatan Township. It was about 4.5 years ago, and some of you will remember this, when elders and officials of the Ho-Chunk Nation came here to testify about the hill and the probability of culturally significant aspects of that hill, and that a walkover was really important. I remember you, Teresa, saying how interesting this was, and maybe you, Jack, remember that? These people were so polite and sweet and so well informed, and they really wanted to do a walkover, which they did. And there are so many burial mounds in the immediate vicinity of that hill. And when I talk to people about the location of the hill and the confluence of the creek and the river, archaeologists and the Ho-Chunk officials almost laugh. It's just like, this is obviously what would be really important. So they did do a walkover, and they said without a shovel test we can't be certain about burials, but that there could be cultural significance there. I'm just repeating this because I don't think that effort should have been disparaged. Thank you.
I'm not recalling it. I wonder if I was here.
Donna, when you're talking hill, you're talking...
The hill that the Erickson mine will destabilize.
Just as a point, I don't think I was here. I don't recall that particular aspect, but I'd be very happy to talk with you about it so that I'm up to speed. But, okay, anything else?
Can I have one point of clarification? Fred, you wanted in the planning commission one, you said on option 3 to change that to 1. Do you want it on all options, and do you want it on more of
I would
adjustment
expect
one
so.
also?
Okay. My option of choice there was number 3, and so that's why I spoke to that particular option. Yeah.
But it probably could go on all three of the
It should go on
planning
all
commission.
3 options,
And
yes.
the board of adjustment one also, or not?
No.
Only on the
I-
planning commission?
Well, I would say if it's on
I
one, it
would-
should be on both. We don't need to
Well-
have, like you said, 10 applicants on
Yeah,
either one, right?
I guess we could
I-
put it on the other, if there's no objection anyplace else to doing that, I'm fine with that,
No,
sure.
I think you change one, change them all.
Yeah, I
Okay.
Yeah,
Very
okay.
good, thank you.
Thank you, Shar.
agree. All right. Anybody else? Entertain,
I'll move adjournment.
Second.
all in favor?
Third. Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Meeting adjourned.